Devil's Hole ignored. Warning: drowning. In 1965, a 20-year-old named Paul Giancontieri and a 19-year-old named David Rose drove out to the middle of the Nevada desert near Death Valley. They were looking for a place called Devil's Hole. Devil's Hole was a small opening in the desert rock, barely 10 feet wide. From the surface, it looked like nothing, just a puddle of still water in the middle of nowhere. But below that water was something terrifying. Devil's Hole was the entrance to an underwater cave system so deep that nobody had ever reached the bottom. Divers had lowered measuring lines over 1,200 feet down and still never hit the floor. The water inside was ancient, over 10,000 years old, left behind by glaciers from the last ice age. It was warm, dark, and filled with powerful currents that pulled everything downward. The area around Devil's Hole was surrounded by a barbed wire fence. Warning signs were posted everywhere. The signs made it clear entry was forbidden, the water was deadly, and swimming was absolutely prohibited. Paul and David ignored every single warning. They climbed over the fence, they walked past the signs. They brought no scuba equipment. They had only snorkel masks and swim fins, gear designed for shallow pools and calm beaches, not for a bottomless underwater cave. The two friends lowered themselves into the warm water and began to dive. A third friend named Bill Alter went in with them. For the first few feet, it felt easy. The water was warm and clear, but Devil's Hole drops fast. Within seconds, the depth goes from inches to hundreds of feet. Paul was the first to go under and not come back up. He disappeared below the surface without a sound. David dove down after his friend to try to find him. He never resurfaced either. Bill tried to follow but became disoriented in the dark water. He barely made it back to the surface alive. He would be the last person to leave Devil's Hole that day. Rescue divers searched the cave for days. They found nothing. The bodies of Paul Giancontieri and David Rose were never recovered. Divers discovered that beneath the visible bottom of the cave, a small opening led to a far larger and still unexplored section. A powerful current flowed through that opening, pulling everything deeper like a drain. The two boys were almost certainly dragged down into that abyss. After the deaths, the government added more fencing and stronger locks around Devil's Hole. But people kept coming. In 2016, 3 men climbed the fence in the middle of the night, fired shotguns at the locks, and went swimming drunk in the cave. One of them vomited in the water and left his underwear floating on the surface. A rare pupfish, one of fewer than 115 left on Earth, was found dead the next day. Devil's Hole does not care about fences, signs, or warnings. It sits in the desert and waits. And when people ignore the signs, it keeps them forever. Maldives cave diving ignored depth limit. On May 15, 2026, 5 Italian divers slipped beneath the turquoise water of Vavu Atoll in the Maldives and never came back up. The group included Monica Montefalcone, a 51-year-old marine biology professor and television personality from the University of Genoa. With her was her 22-year-old daughter, Giorgia Somakal. 2 young researchers, 31-year-old Federico Gualtieri and 31-year-old Muriel Odanino, joined them. Their diving guide was 44-year-old Gianluca Benedetti, an Italian instructor based in the Maldives. The group had permission from Maldivian authorities to conduct research dives on soft corals near the atoll, but the authorities did not know the divers were planning to enter an underwater cave. The Maldives has a strict 30-meter depth limit for tourist diving. The cave entrance sat at 47 meters, already well past the legal limit. The cave itself plunged to over 60 meters deep. If the Maldives government had known the divers were going into a cave at that depth, they would have sent the Coast Guard to assist. Nobody was sent. Nobody was told. The 5 divers descended to the cave entrance and swam inside. The first chamber was large and bright, with a sandy bottom and enough sunlight to see clearly. From there, a narrow 30-meter-long corridor led to a second chamber deeper inside the rock. The corridor ended in a sandbank that was easy to swim over on the way in. But on the way out, the sandbank created an optical illusion. It hid the correct exit corridor from view. When the divers tried to leave, they could not find the way out. In the confusion, they swam into a tunnel to the left of the real exit. That tunnel was a dead end. There was no way out. Their air was limited. They only had enough for a few minutes at that depth. There was no time for multiple attempts. All 5 divers died inside the dead-end corridor. Gianluca, the guide, was found near the entrance to the first chamber. He may have tried to go for help. The other 4 were found together in the dead-end tunnel. The Maldivian military sent divers to recover the bodies. One of those military divers, a man named Mohammed Mahoudi, died from decompression sickness during the recovery operation. 6 people were now dead because of a single dive. Finnish recovery specialists from Divers Alert Network Europe were flown in to finish the job. They recovered the remaining 4 bodies and discovered GoPro cameras that may help explain what happened in the final minutes. Investigators are now asking hard questions. Why were the divers allowed to exceed the 30-meter limit? Why did they enter a cave without telling authorities? Why was there no safety plan for a cave dive at 60 meters? The Maldives called it the worst diving accident in the country's history. The cave in Vavu Atoll was not hidden. The depth limit was not a secret. The rules were clear. 5 people ignored them and 6 people died. Sea cave tide warning ignored tragedy. In August 2017, a couple from London named Sarah and Marcus were on holiday on the coast of Portugal. They were walking along a beach in the Algarve when they spotted a large sea cave at the base of the Golden Cliffs. The cave was wide and tall, big enough to walk into without ducking. Inside, the cave stretched back about 50 meters with towering walls carved by centuries of crashing waves. At the entrance, a sign was bolted to the rock in 4 languages: Portuguese, English, Spanish, and French. It said, "Warning, this cave floods at high tide. Do not enter within 2 hours of high tide. People have drowned here." Marcus checked his phone. High tide was in 90 minutes. Sarah said they should wait and come back the next day. Marcus said 90 minutes was plenty of time. They would only be inside for 20 minutes. They walked in. The cave was magnificent. The walls glowed orange and gold in the afternoon light. Water dripped from the ceiling, and shallow pools reflected the rock above like mirrors. They took photos, explored side chambers, and climbed over boulders to reach the back of the cave. At the very back, they found a narrow passage that led to a small hidden beach, surrounded on all sides by rock. It was like a secret room inside the cliff. They sat down to take photos and eat snacks from their bags. They lost track of time. When they finally stood up to leave, the water had already started to rise. The passage they had walked through on dry sand was now ankle-deep in seawater. They waded through, not worried yet. But the main chamber of the cave had changed completely. Water was pouring in from the mouth of the cave in powerful surges. Each wave pushed deeper into the chamber, and each wave was bigger than the last. Within minutes, the water was waist-deep and rising fast. Marcus grabbed Sarah's hand and they tried to wade toward the entrance, but the current was too strong. Each surge knocked them off their feet. The water kept rising into their chests, then their shoulders, then their necks. Sarah screamed for help, but the cave swallowed the sound. Marcus pushed Sarah onto a narrow rock ledge near the ceiling and climbed up beside her. The ledge was barely wide enough to sit on. Below them, the water continued to rise. For 2 hours, they clung to that ledge as the tide filled the cave around them. The water came within inches of their faces before it finally stopped rising. At high tide, a local fisherman heard screaming from inside the cliff. He called the Coast Guard. Rescuers in a small inflatable boat entered the cave through the flooded entrance and found Sarah and Marcus on the ledge, shaking, soaked, and barely conscious. They were pulled out and taken to hospital for hypothermia. Both survived. The Coast Guard officer who rescued them said he had pulled people from that cave 3 times in the past year alone. Every time, it was the same story. They read the sign, checked the tide, and went in anyway. The sign said 90 minutes was not enough. Marcus thought he knew better. The ocean proved him wrong. Cenote warning sign ignored drowning. In the summer of 2019, a group of 4 American college students on spring break in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula found a cenote deep in the jungle. A cenote is a natural sinkhole where the limestone ground has collapsed and exposed the underground river below. The Yucatan is full of them. Thousands of blue pools hidden among the trees, some with underwater cave systems stretching for miles. This cenote was not on any tourist map. A local taxi driver had told them about it. He said the water was beautiful but warned them, "Do not go past the light zone." A rusted metal sign stood at the edge of the cenote. It showed a picture of the Grim Reaper and a skull and crossbones. The words on the sign were in Spanish and English. Danger, underwater cave. Do not enter without cave diving certification. People have died here. The 4 students looked at the sign, laughed, and jumped in. The cenote was stunning. Warm, crystal clear water that dropped straight down into a wide blue chamber. Sunlight poured in from above, turning everything a brilliant turquoise. Two of the students, Tyler and Jake Hossett, had brought cheap snorkel masks and fins. They were strong swimmers and confident in the water. They swam to the far side of the cenote and found a dark opening in the rock wall where the light faded into blackness. That was the entrance to the cave. Tyler swam a few meters inside and came back, saying it was incredible, like swimming into another world. Jake followed him in. They swam further this time. Without fins designed for cave diving, their kicks stirred up the fine sediment on the cave floor. Within seconds, a cloud of silt exploded through the water. The crystal-clear visibility dropped to 0. Tyler could not see his own hands. He turned around, or what he thought was around, and swam. He hit a wall. He turned again and swam into another wall. Every direction felt wrong. His chest tightened. He was running out of breath. Tyler managed to claw his way along the ceiling until he felt open water above him and kicked upward into the light. He broke the surface, gasping and coughing. Jake did not come up. Tyler screamed his friend's name across the cenote. The two students on the bank called emergency services. A local cave diving team arrived within 2 hours. They found Jake's body 40 meters inside the cave, in a narrow passage with no exit. He had swum the wrong direction in the silt out and run out of air in a dead end. He was 21 years old. The Grim Reaper sign still stands at the edge of that cenote today. The same sign Jake and Tyler laughed at before they jumped in.